everybody. Welcome to Capital of Combat. The name says it all. I'm Hakeem Branch.
Rob Jarrell.
And today we're going to recap this past weekend's Premier Boxing Champions card, which aired on NBC. And on that card, we had Andy Lee versus Peter Quillin for Lee's IBF title. And then we had Lamont Peterson versus Danny Garcia in a catchweight fight that was just for bragging rights. They were pretty decent fights. We're going to start off with Lee-Quillin in a match that had Peter Quillin vying for the belt that he vacated almost a year ago, and Andy Lee defending a belt that he just won, I think, was it December?
Yeah.
This past December. So, take it away, Rob.
Okay, so we're going to start with the QuillinLee fight. Two middleweights, one been around the block for the who's who of who's out there in the middleweight division, and Quillin, who seems to not be taking the biggest fights that's offered to him. I know that sounds bad, but it's true.
I would say it is true. He was going to fight Korobov for that belt for many different reasons. He did not, and now he's fighting for that same belt against Andy Lee for like a third of what he would have made fighting Korobov.
I don't care what you say. That's bad business. That's neither here nor there. Anyway, so what we said in the video is that, one, avoid the right hook. He did a pretty decent job of it.
For the most part.
To the 7th round, where he caught one for his troubles right after Lee threw a very long and kind of sloppy looking straight left. But until then, I would say in the first 6 rounds, let's say 5 rounds, I would have given Quillin 5-0, especially with the 2 knockdowns in the first and second. Personally, I think he probably could have got him out of there within that time because he had Lee hurt.
Yeah, he was hurt pretty bad.
But he let Lee come back. Lee did establish that jab a lot better. He doubled up the jab, and he wasn't pushing it out there. He was actually snapping it, which did set up some good punches. I feel that Lee came on in the second half of the fight. But it ended up a draw. I would have given it to Quillin by maybe a round or 2, but I'm not upset at the draw because some of those were either very inactive rounds between the both of them, or they were just really close.
Yeah, I agree with that assessment. The whole time I was watching, I was like, can somebody land a combo, please? I mean, both guys, I think no one threw more than 3 punches at once. But no, I don't think there was ever a sequence where either guy landed more than 1 punch at a time. This was a highly tactical bout, which is not a bad thing. Mm-hmm. Both guys used their feet really well to slide in and out to get their offense off when they needed to and get out of there when they needed to, except for the knockdowns when, they didn't get out of there in time. Excuse me. But those were all set up very nicely, like I said, using their feet. This was a very footwork intensive match, and if you weren't looking at that, you might have been bored because there weren't a lot of punches being thrown. But someone like me, I see there are not a lot of punches being thrown. I look at why there are not a lot of punches being thrown, and I saw they had a very intense footwork battle going on, and it was one of those orthodox versus southpaw things. Both guys are trying to get their feet in the correct position to land their power punches. And even on one of the knockdowns that Quillin had, he was in what they call the incorrect position to have your feet in with a southpaw, which is your lead foot on the inside of theirs. This time Quillin did, but he was still able to land that right hand, and he dropped Lee hard.
He might have gotten more power had he actually stepped to the outside of his foot.
That's possible. And from the looks of that, had he done that, we might have been looking at an early Quillin knockout. I was surprised at how often he was able to hurt Andy Lee. I thought he hurt him like once or twice, but he seemed to hurt him at least, I would say 4 or 5 times badly during the fight. And I don't think Quillin ever looked that bad, that hurt, but he was dropped for the first time in his career, and he got a slight blemish with the draw. But in that fight, if you haven't seen it, check out the footwork. It was some pretty good footwork, and they kind of tried to sharpshoot, pot shot each other, and they did a pretty decent job of it. But I think if they do fight again, the guy who can land in combination is the guy who's going to win.
Now, Quillin is supposed to go in to fight Danny Jacobs next in the Barclays. I don't know what Lee's going to do at this point. He'll probably fight one of the European guys, or it's kind of hard to say, especially for that division, because we know it is very top heavy, especially with Golovkin, if you ask me, is the top in the division.
Yeah, nobody's going near that guy unless they have to. Unless you're one of the up-and-coming guys who really want to get that shine.
And we'll see what it looks like after Willie Monroe. He takes on Willie Monroe Jr.
Yeah, that's coming up soon. All right, so let's move on to the main event. And in that main event, we had Danny Garcia and Lamont Peterson. Battle of I-95, Peterson from D.C., Garcia from Philadelphia, fighting in New York. And if you listen to the crowd, most of it was pro Garcia, but you did have a pretty good Peterson contingency in there as well. And in this fight, we said in our preview video, if you haven't watched it, give that a look, that if Garcia could not get him out of there within the first 4 rounds, he was going to be in for a hell of a fight. And he was in for a hell of a fight from the first bell. Peterson came out with a plan to make Garcia miss, tire him out, and then put the pressure on him later on. The plan worked for the most part. It worked to a T, with the exception that something that I tell people all the time that I work with in the gym is if you make somebody miss, you make them pay. Now, I don't understand why, but for some reason, a lot of judges do not score the jab. Peterson landed a lot of jabs in that first 5 or 6 rounds, but it was almost like the judges didn't care. He needed to land a few more right crosses and hooks as counters, because there was a lot of times Garcia was flailing and was wide open for counters, but Peterson didn't take them because he was focused on making Garcia reach and overextend himself and become tired from missing those punches and trying to correct himself back into position. But had he done that, I think he would have won the fight handily. I still scored the fight for him because I actually do score a jab. I still think that's a landed punch. And he was visibly putting marks on Garcia's face with the jab, which means it was landing and landing effectively. Garcia, on the other hand, like we said, he finds a way to win. He came forward most of the fight, especially the early parts of the fight, which is what the judges like to see. And he did, like, a lot of his shots to the body were actually kind of low, but he was throwing them, and he was throwing the power shots. So the judges were liking that. I think it wasn't until like round 5 or so that he really landed anything of any consequence. That was a good right hand that Peterson rolled. That is a highly advanced defensive technique that I do not suggest that someone who is not a ring veteran try. But he rolled Garcia's right hand a lot, and he pretty much took Garcia's left hook out of the equation completely. So I don't remember him landing any left hook of consequence in the fight.
Not really. I mean, he was very cognizant of it, and I'm not saying Garcia has a bad right hand, but that's not something that's just his money punch like his left hook is. Now, I will say this. I gave Peterson the first round, but until the 6th or 7th round is when I scored for Peterson again. Because of the fact that it's not that he was just making Garcia miss. He was giving up too many ground, which made Garcia look like he was, the aggressor. Looks like he was the one pushing the action, which in a way he was, but had Peterson maybe tighten up his circles instead of using the entire ring and actually looking like he was running away, just kind of move side to side, because he does a great job. He had a great amateur career, so he knows how to do it. If he had maybe stayed, I don't want to say stay in the box, but stay within the range that says it looks like he's making Garcia miss, then it would have boded well better for him.
Yeah, he had a huge reach advantage over Garcia. I think it was at least like 5 inches.
Now, he had a huge size advantage because
he came into the ring as a super middleweight.
Yeah, that was a 22-pound rehydration, so that's a lot. And you could tell the difference in the second half of the fight when to the point where Garcia was no longer walking Peterson down. Like, Peterson still moved, but when he wanted to walk him down, you could see, like...
Yeah, there was nothing Garcia could do about it.
Right. And when he started, especially throwing those hooks, and I wish he would have jabbed in a little bit more, because I think I would have given Garcia one of maybe, I don't know if it's 9 or 10. It's one where it wasn't too much that Peterson was doing. He looked like he did a little bit more than he did in the first half of the fight.
Yeah.
A draw I can see. I can't really see it for Garcia because of the fact that he missed a lot. And I mean, he did not look swift at all.
Yeah, he did. He looked really slow against Peterson.
But I will say this, he was faster on the trigger. He was more willing to let his hands go. But I think he felt the power of Peterson before Peterson felt his power. And you could tell because he would visibly back up. And if you just starting to get bullied. So I think that's where Peterson started to win the fight. But I can't really say that with confidence. Not that I'm arguing the decision. I just scored it the other way by like a round. Just because, to me, Peterson gave too many rounds away with his excessive movement in the first half of the fight.
Yeah, I scored it for Peterson. I could see how they gave it to Garcia because of those things I mentioned earlier. So I was like a little let down, but like at the same time, I was like, this really doesn't have any effect on me personally. So I was like, oh man, that sucks. Okay, on to the next one. You know, they didn't pay me or anything like that. So I didn't have any personal connection to it, even though that was one of the few times I actually did root for a fighter because I've been in that gym a few times and I've worked with some of the fighters in there. I never worked with Peterson. They were like away during that time we were going there. But like I said, I kind of feel connected to them by proxy a little bit. So I kind of rooted for them a little bit. And I was let down for about 5 seconds. But I could definitely see why. And another thing I wanted to add in before we leave, I did think that Garcia landed the harder shots when he did land. Peterson landed the more effective blows. Like you could see that Garcia, his face was getting marked up. He was visibly backing up when Peterson landed.
Even his face was just like Peterson. Even though Peterson took those hard shots, and you could tell that Peterson wasn't as affected by it as when I saw a couple of right hands in, I want to say the 10th and 11th round that Garcia just did not take well.
Yeah. But it seemed, I guess it may have been like the sound or how they punched. It sounded like Garcia's punches landed harder. And it might have been just that Lamont Peterson was just so much stronger than him that it didn't matter because he was just shrugging them off. And it was like Peterson was landing those blows like you see those old kung fu movies where the guy punches something and it doesn't look like it did much damage, but like his internal organs are like bleeding out or something like that.
Right.
Or like he hits a tree and you see like this little small dent and the person's like, ha, you're weak. And then you go around and see the back of the tree and it's like blown out. I think Peterson was hitting them like that, whereas it didn't sound like it was really hard, but to Garcia, he was like, God damn it, this punch is hard. So as far as audio effect, I was thinking Garcia was taking it on the sound of his punches, like that was swaying the judges as well.
Now, both of them are looking to move up to 147. Yeah. Peterson, I could see if you're rehydrating to 165, that is insane from 143. Yeah. And Garcia, I don't know, he just looked way too slight to be in there at 143. You could tell.
Yeah, that weight cut is taking its toll on him though. Yeah. He might be living a good life, you know, during his off time, and that's his prerogative. But I don't see him faring too well at 147 on the top level. I think they can probably feed him a few guys to keep him winning. But once he has to step up to the Thurmans, Porters, the Maidanas,
those guys who are just not only just good boxers, but they're physically strong and they're physically big.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to fare too well against them. But one of the intangibles we said about Garcia, this kid finds a way to win every single time. And who knows, when he gets up there, he might keep finding a way to win. So we'll see. Another thing, okay, this is really the last thing before I break. that thing about the whole running thing, I don't understand why people cannot teach their fighters to cut the ring off. And I don't understand why fighters can't cut the ring off. They keep complaining about running, but they can't do anything about it. Do you hear Golovkin complaining about people running from him? No, because they can't. Because he knows how to cut the ring off. And I'm going to leave it at that. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you liked this episode. We got the comment section below if there's anything you want to add. Make sure you like this video, share it with your friends, and if you haven't subscribed, make sure you do so, because you know we got plenty more videos coming. You can hit us up on Facebook, Capital of Combat, Google Plus, same name. You can hit us up on our email, capitalofcombat@gmail.com. Any of those formats, you got a question, let us know. We put you in the combat mailbag. We'll got some new technical toolboxes coming up for you soon. And of course, we'll be following the boxing Super Bowl in Mayweather-Pacquiao. So stay tuned for that, and we'll catch you guys in the next episode. Peace.
This is round one, and you've already lost. They don't seem to see that everything we've done is coming and cost. My fists are on fire. I perform till I perspire. My demons are in a rage. Keep thinking that it's a game. I kick crime, hurricane. I told them I don't play. I'm liquid.
Black Street Fighter.